Okay, let's read a couple of chapters here, shall we? So we're on to chapters 8 and 9 of Annihilation. So we'll just jump right on into it. Kick back here. Chapter 8. Seated in the command chair on the bridge of the Ascendant Spear, Darth Carid struggled to keep her contempt at bay as her gaze traced across the 24 Imperial officers and crew working at their stations all around her. Huddled over consoles and computer screens, their fingers flew over control pads as they reacted to the constant stream of incoming data, while the vessel hurled through the empty void of hyperspace. The inefficiency of their clumsy, archaic method of interacting with the ship filled her with disgust. 10 minutes until we reach Lerator, my lord, Moff Lorman said from his seat on the far side of the bridge. Be sure to come out of hyperspace beyond the range of the Republic sensors, she cautioned. It was unlikely Lorman would make such a careless and obvious error. The Moff was a capable officer. But, like nearly every Imperial assigned to the Ascendant Spear, he was an interloper on her ship, an insignificant parasite clinging to the underbelly, and she didn't trust him not to make a mistake that would put her ship in danger. Darth Mechas had designed the vessel with numerous automated systems, and the Spear required a crew of only 3,000 to operate at peak efficiency, less than half of what would typically be assigned to an Imperial capital ship. Carid had come to accept them as a necessary inconvenience, though there were times like now when she resented their presence. When plugged into the Spear's command pod, she had total access to all the vessel's systems and sensors, but the effort of controlling an entire capital ship single-handedly was mentally and physically exhausting. She had no choice but to defer to Moff Lorman and his crew during routine travel and other similarly mundane activities, allowing them to run the vessel using conventional means while she saved her energies for the high intensity of battle. When will we send a message to Darth Gravis telling him reinforcements are on the way, my lord? Moff Lorman asked. Carid rose from her seat. I will contact Gravis, she said, after I have taken command of my ship. She crossed the bridge with quick, purposeful strides, making her way to the turbolift. The door slid open and she stepped inside, pressing the button that whisked her down past floor after floor until she reached the innermost level of the vessel. She stepped out of the turbolift and made her way down the short corridor leading to a heavily secured door. A retinal scan confirmed her identity, and the door slid open to reveal the Ascendant Spear's true heart. The circular chamber was nearly 30 meters in diameter, but the inside was empty save for the control console on the perimeter. Carid's two apprentices, one a male human, the other a female pure-blooded Sith, and the large crystal sphere in the center. The apprentices were sitting cross-legged on the floor on either side of the sphere, meditating to focus their minds in preparation for the coming battle. It's time, Carid said as she approached the sphere. She placed a hand on the cool exterior, and the sphere parted vertically in the middle. The two halves opened at her touch to reveal the true genius of Darth Mechas. The interior of the Ascendant Spear's isolated command pod featured a single chair surrounded by dozens of monitors and screens. A delicate web of interwoven wires was suspended a meter above the chair. A dozen loose strands hung down from the web, each tipped with a long, thin needle. Lowering herself into the chair, Carid's fingers tapped at the control panels built into the arms. The pod slowly closed, encasing her in the nearly indestructible glittering cocoon. The fingers of her left hand traced a complex pattern over the control panel, powering up the command pod and causing the web of dangling wires above her head to come to life. Twisting and writhing, they slithered down to wrap themselves around Carid's face and the back of her skull. Carid closed her eyes in eager anticipation, allowing the dark side of the Force to flow through her. Outside the sphere, she sensed her apprentices deep in meditation, opening themselves to her so she could draw on their strength as she took command of the spear. The wires gently caressed her neck and cheeks with the fine-tipped needles on the end, sending a shiver down the Falline's spine. Then one of the needles plunged itself into the cybernetic implant at the back of her neck, making her gasp out loud. Another slid into the implant behind her left ear, and two more burrowed into the left side of her skull on either side of her temple. Two connected to her forehead, and five more pierced the back of her skull. The final strand of wire slithered across the lid of her still closed eye before slipping into the tiny aperture of the cybernetic interface implanted in her left cheek. She opened her eyes, her vision now an amalgamation of what she saw on the screens and monitors, as well as everything within range of the ship's sensors. The star field flickered rapidly into view as the Ascendant Spear dropped from hyperspace on the edge of the Eucralis sector, just beyond sensor range of the Imperial and Republic fleets engaged in battle over the skies of Lerator. Though the other ships couldn't detect her presence at this range, the Spear's advanced systems gave Karad a perfect awareness of what was transpiring. A combination of her force abilities and the cybernetic implants relaying data from the Ascendant Spear's long-range scanners enabled Karad to instantly see that although the battle had just begun, Darth Gravis already had the upper hand. The Republic had a single capital ship in the fray, the Mardoris, a D-class attack cruiser, over 500 meters in length. The Mardoris had a wide, flat hull covered with a thick layer of armor plating, as if the vessel were hidden under a hump-shaped shell. It was supported by two hammerheads, half its size, easily identifiable by the forward bridges extending perpendicularly above and below the longer main body of the vessel, and three slightly smaller CR-12 corvettes. Sleek, narrow ships equipped with battering ram-shaped bows to run enemy blockades and prominent external afterburners to enhance speed and maneuverability. The fleet was rounded out by half a dozen BT-7 Thunderclap fighters, the latest Republic incarnation in personal attack craft. The agile Thunderclap resembled a sideways Y, with the cockpit situated in the crook of the two smaller arms. In contrast, Gravis's personal dreadnought Exemplar was almost 800 meters in length. The wedge-shaped capital ship was flanked by three claw-shaped C-class destroyers that were nearly as large as a Republic flagship. Each destroyer was supported by a complement of 6 interceptors, the Empire's agile, fang-winged answer to the Republic Thunderclap. Gravis had devised a battle plan that would minimize the risk to his own ship. The destroyers had been deployed to engage the corvettes and Thunderclap fighters, freeing up the quick and nimble interceptors to continuously strafe the hammerheads and the heavily armored Mardoris. This allowed the Exemplar to remain at a safe distance, firing away with its batteries at the Republic vessels with no fear of any return assault. Unfortunately, unless Gravis moved closer to the action, he was limited to inflicting minimal damage on the enemy capital ship's deflector shields and reinforced hull. Ultimately, the Imperials would prevail, but it would be a battle of attrition. Karad had neither the patience nor the temperament for such a strategy. With a flick of her little finger, she opened a hailing channel to the Exemplar, accelerating the Ascendant Spear toward the other vessels at the same time. Darth Gravis, this is Darth Karad. The Ascendant Spear is at your disposal. Gravis's reply was swift and certain. Disengage, Karad. We didn't call for reinforcements. This is my battle to win, not yours. Okay, we might be going into an ad. Yep, there we go. All right. So, we'll just ride this ad out. It says 40 seconds. So, this is my battle, not yours. That's where we'll pick up right after that. So, I think this is well written so far. I'm liking it. I'm liking the story. Some of the things I've been reading, I have not enjoyed the the writing style as much. Um, but that's okay. I'm still going to read it. I still want to read all of the Star Wars stuff. So, okay, it says we're back. So, picking up where we left off. Carey ignored his orders. The Ascendant Spear's engines had already accelerated the ship to 70% of maximum sublight speed, bringing them in range of the Republic sensors. The triangular design of the spear was common among Imperial capital ships, but its immense size, more than twice that of any other participant in the battle, was instantly recognizable. As Carrot had expected, the spear's arrival drew an immediate response as one of the Republic hammerheads disengaged and came about to face the new threat. Two of the Thunderclap fighters also veered around, spinning and diving to avoid the destroyer cannons as they sped off to support the hammerhead. The hammerhead's turbolasers opened fire a second later. On a level deep within her subconscious mind, Carrad felt the heat as the spear's deflectors easily repelled the first volley. An instant later, the thunderclaps swooped in, one from port, the other from starboard. Lacking enough firepower to inflict significant damage on a ship the size of the Ascendant Spear, beyond point-blank range, the pilots relied on speed and maneuverability to get in close enough to strafe the surface of the larger vessel. To Kara, they were like annoying insects buzzing in her ear. The only logical response was to slap them out of existence. She focused her mind on the starboard defense turrets, using the spear's sensors to track the fast-moving thunderclap before willing the guns to fire. A rapid series of ion blasts hit the fighter in rapid succession, each one striking its target with the unnatural precision made possible only by the perfect fusion of machine and organic. The thunderclap exploded in a ball of heat and light, but Carrad barely noticed. She had her sights set fully on the second fighter. The pilot was taking desperate evasive maneuvers, wheeling, spinning, and diving at crazy angles. Against the augmented reactions derived from Carrad's symbiotic link to her ship, he may as well have been standing still. The port turrets fired and the second thunderclap disintegrated. The hammerhead opened fire again. The Carrad once more had the sensation of distant heat as the deflectors repelled the incoming blasts. The hammerhead was still too far out to pose any real threat. It had been relying on the fighters to occupy the enemy until it got in close enough to pierce the spear's shields. Bereft of their escort, they were vulnerable and exposed. Carrad seized the opportunity, opening fire with the Ascendant Spear's main guns. The blackness of space was illuminated by a blazing barrage of concentrated red energy beams. They ripped through the hammerhead's deflector shields and shredded the armor-plated hull. Inside, the emergency systems would be overloaded as the vessel's automated systems tried to somehow keep it functional long enough for the crew to evacuate. A second volley from the spear ended that faint hope as the lasers pierced the engine core containment unit and the hammerhead vanished in a violent explosion. Gravis's voice rang out once more, simultaneously echoing in Kara's ear and in the part of her brain that was linked into the ship's communication systems. "You think this will turn the Dark Council against me, Carad?" he sneered. "You could take out every Republic ship in this quadrant, but when it comes time to choose someone to join their ranks, they'll still pick me over a Faline." "You do not grasp the danger you are in, Gravis," she answered coldly. "You could be killed in this battle. I am here to ensure a desirable outcome for the Empire." The threat was veiled, but like any true Sith, her rival immediately understood the sinister implications of her words. Only one of them would leave this battle alive. "Ignore the Republic ships," Gravis commanded his fleet, forgetting in his panic that the new orders were being transmitted over the same standard Imperial frequency Carrad was using. "Fire on the Ascendant Spear. Destroy it at all costs. Do not let it—" His words were cut off mid-sentence as Gravis, or someone under his command, had the sense to flip over to an auxiliary communications channel. But Carrad knew words alone wouldn't be enough to justify killing Gravis to the Council. She needed him to make the first move. The unexpected switch from Republic targets to the Ascendant Spear threw the Imperial fleet into disarray. The interceptors, swarming the Mardoras and the Hammerhead, abandoned their strafing runs, peeling away to regroup for a coordinated assault on their new target. The destroyers disengaged from the Republic corvettes and thunderclaps, pulling back as they moved to position themselves between the Exemplar and Carad's retaliation. The Republic fleet, unaware that they now shared a common enemy with their Imperial foes, seized the advantage. 7 interceptors were wiped out by the batteries of the Hammerhead and the Mardoras, and a steady stream of fire from the corvettes pummeled the retreating destroyers, overloading their deflector shields so that the incoming thunderclaps were able to inflict heavy damage. Carad watched the sudden tactical shift with an intense hunger, instantly aware of the position and shield status of every vessel through the spear's advanced sensors. The information relayed directly through the pulsing wires of the command pod and into her cybernetic implants. Realizing the Republic vessels were focused on the suddenly vulnerable ships of Gravis's fleet, she sent the spear charging into the heart of the fray. Neither Gravis nor the Republic commander anticipated her strategy. Capital ships typically stayed at range, knowing their powerful guns would wear down smaller vessels from a safe distance. By moving into range of the fleets, Carad was taking a risk. If they coordinated their efforts, they could overwhelm the spear. But Carad knew the element of surprise would prevent that from happening, and at close proximity, the spear's turbo lasers could rip through deflectors and obliterate any of the other vessels in seconds. She started with the Mardoras. As the ship bore down on the Republic ship, as the spear bore down on the Republic ship, the battle descended into chaos. One of the corvettes and 2 of the thunderclaps altered course to try to save their flagship. The rest continued their assault on the crippled destroyers. 8 interceptors swooped back to try to save the destroyers. The rest hurtled toward the spear. The Hammerhead closed on the Exemplar as it tried to flee to the farthest edge of the conflict. The Mardoras tried to ward off the Ascendant Spear, but before it could bring its guns to bear, Carad opened fire with her entire forward-facing battery. Turbolasers and ion cannons roared, combining in a glorious symphony of destruction, but all but vaporizing the Mardoras in a matter of seconds. Carad relished the kill, sensing the terror of the dying crew through the force. An instant later, she felt a sharp sliver of pain slicing through her, like someone had slid a vibroblade between her shoulders. Gravis had taken the bait, ordering the Exemplar to fire on the spear. The blast penetrated the deflector shields and scorched the exterior hull, damage to the ship registering in Carad's mind like a wound to her own body. The Exemplar was too far away to do any serious harm, but by firing the first shot, Gravis had given Carad the justification she needed to target his ships without having to answer to the Dark Council for destroying an Imperial fleet. The fighters that had tried to come to Mardoras' aid swooped by the spear, their strafing run sending 1,000 pinpricks up Carad's arms. She snuffed them out before they could make a second run. The Hammerhead had caught the Exemplar, forcing Gravis to focus on the immediate threat and preventing him from firing a second shot at the spear. One of the damaged destroyers had been finished off by the corvettes, which were now being hard-pressed by a phalanx of interceptors. The second interceptor squad was closing in on the spear. Carad opened fire with her turbolasers, but only managed to hit 2 of them as the rest continued in undeterred. Carad's fingers flickered and danced on the control panel, and the spear banked at an impossible angle, directly into the path of the incoming horde. The spear had the maneuverability of a vessel half its size, and the unexpected change in direction happened too quickly for the interceptors to react. The tiny fighters were smashed to smithereens against the gargantuan battleship's hull. The move also brought the front of the spear in line with the surviving destroyers and interceptors, still locked in battle with the corvettes. Carad's eyes flickered over the screens of the pod as she descended on the skirmish. the massive capital ship dwarfing the other players. She tapped the control panel, her fingers a blur as she selected her targets in rapid succession. The interceptors, too engaged with the Republic vessels to take evasive action, were wiped out in the first volley. The corvettes were next, their deflectors useless against the Spear's point-blank assault. The destroyers, already heavily damaged, were a mere afterthought. Several of the vessels were engulfed by fiery explosions, others rendered lifeless hunks of scrap, their hulls perforated with countless gaping holes, but Kara didn't have time to relish the carnage as she turned her attention to her final goal. The remaining Hammerhead was still firing at the Exemplar, locked in close battle with the Republic ship. Gravis had been unable to prepare his vessel for the jump to hyperspace. Lowering the shields to make the jump wasn't an option when an enemy was firing at you. There had been a brief window for them both to escape while the Spear was wiping out the other ships, but the Republic commander had failed to fully grasp the situation. Instead of mutual flight, she had chosen to continue the battle rather than risk an attempted retreat that would leave him vulnerable to the Exemplar. Now it was too late for both of them. The Ascendant Spear closed rapidly on the two remaining ships. Concentrating her turbo lasers on the Hammerhead's center, she sliced it cleanly in two. Bodies and debris spilled out from the gutted Republic ship into the cold, dark void of space. At the same time, she sensed a massive energy signature emanating from the Exemplar. Gravis was trying to make a last desperate jump to hyperspace. He'd dropped his shields and left his ship vulnerable to attack, but he knew he had no hope of defeating the Empire's most feared weapon if he stayed to fight. Drawing on the automated target systems of the Spear, Carrad fired a precision strike to disable the Exemplar's hyperdrive, leaving Gravis at her mercy. A sudden beeping in her ear told her Gravis was trying to open up a hailing channel, but she had no interest in listening to him barter and beg for his life. Instead, she took aim and fired for the last time. The unshielded Exemplar exploded into a ball of spectacular blue flame, instantly killing everyone aboard. Carrad sent the Spear in a long, slow circle, scanning the wreckage and debris of the entire battle for signs of life, but finding nothing. Satisfied, she contacted the bridge. Moff Lorman, prepare to resume command. Yes, my lord, he replied. Carrad tapped the controls beneath her fingers once more, severing her connection with the Spear. She shuddered as the wires retracted, the needles of the biosynthetic interfaces slowly withdrawing from her cybernetic implants. A wave of exhaustion washed over her, along with an overwhelming sense of intense and irreplaceable loss. Each time she broke her connection with the ship, it felt like losing a limb. The crystal sphere slowly opened to reveal her two apprentices still sitting cross-legged on the floor on either side. Their faces were drawn and haggard, their brows covered with sheens of sweat from supporting their master's exertion. But though they shared her fatigue, only she knew the glory of becoming one with the Spear, and only she could understand the emptiness that enveloped her when the connection was broken. Tell Moff Lorman to transmit the record of the battle to the Dark Council, she said, her voice weary. Let them see that Gravis was a traitor to the Empire. To herself she added, and let them see what happens to those who get in my way. And that is the end of Chapter 8. So I'm going to jump straight on into Chapter 9. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to see, because I can't help myself, I'm going to see how long it is. Not too bad. Okay, the analytics office was a windowless, overcrowded room packed with computer terminals and 23 SIS agents gathering, organizing, and analyzing data from the thousands of reports that came in every day. For the past week, the cramped office might as well have been Theron's home, as he and the rest of the understaffed team worked double shifts to try to stay on top of everything coming in. However, despite making a sincere effort to contribute, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was wasting his time. It wasn't that he didn't believe in what analytics was doing. He understood they were a vital component of SIS. But Theron had developed a unique set of specialized skills, almost none of which were applicable to his current position. It made him want to scream. 20 times a day, a piece of small but unusual information that begged further attention would pass across his desk, a potential lead to what might possibly be a mission critical to the safety of the Republic. Instead of being able to act on these leads, he had to write up reports with recommendations on how to proceed, then forward them to his superiors for review, knowing full well that by the time a field agent was assigned to the case, the opportunity would probably be lost. And even when he wasn't in the office, he was still stuck on Coruscant, probably the safest and most secure planet in the Republic, and the absolute last place Theron wanted to be. Hello, Team Never Tilt. Hey, Wild Nambro appears. Took a nap today specifically so I could stay up tonight and have a beer with you. Well, welcome in and thank you for joining. Always glad to have you come in. Happy St. Patty's Day to you too. We did all the celebrating for St. Patty's I could stand at work today. I really didn't want to go out and do anything. So I decided to carry on with the reading. Not really one for going out and partying anymore anyway. So, absolutely. Oh, now I lost where I was. Let myself get distracted. Last place Laren wanted to be. Okay. He feared that he was losing his edge. That day after day of boring desk work had dulled his survival instincts. The director had sentenced him to 3 months in this prison, and if he served his full time, he might never regain them. If he didn't get out of analytics soon, something bad was bound to happen. Maybe he'd resign in disgust, go rogue and take off on a mission without SIS approval or support. Or maybe he'd just snap and go on a rampage throughout the analytics office, smashing every monitor and computer station he could before the authorities dragged him away. Or, most terrifying of all, maybe he'd just learn to accept the drudgery of his new post. The only thing that had kept him sane so far was the few hours each day he was able to work on Operation Endgame, Jace Malcolm's special project. The Ascendant Spear was the last vestige of Darth Mekis's superweapons research program, one last loose thread from the mission that had cost Nagani Zhou his life. Theron had no problem spending his time trying to devise a plan to bring the spear down. What bothered him was the thought that some other agent would be the one to actually put that plan into effect. He felt a tap on his shoulder as the voice of his supervisor said, "Time to pack it in, Theron." Surprised, Theron glanced at the chrono on the wall. "Guess I lost track of time," he said. "Another sign you're losing your edge. The days just used to drag on forever. You could feel each individual agonizing second slipping by. Now you're getting so used to being stuck in the chair you don't even notice when it's time to leave. You're numb." "Go home and get some sleep," his supervisor ordered. "The reports will still be here tomorrow." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Theron silently wondered as he stood up and headed back to his apartment. Once inside, he briefly considered doing some off-the-clock work on Operation Endgame. Even from home, he had access to files with all but the highest level of security clearance. But the drudgery of analytics sapped both his physical and mental energy. All he wanted to do was collapse into bed. They're grinding you down bit by bit. Ignoring the voice inside his head, Theron made his way to the bedroom at the rear of the apartment, stripped off his clothes, flicked off the light, and crawled under the covers. Just as he was on the verge of drifting off, however, he was jarred awake by the chime of an incoming holocall. "Accept incoming," he muttered groggily, taking a moment to realize the call wasn't coming on his cybernetic implant. He rolled over and tapped the holocom on the nightstand beside the bed, propping himself up on his elbow to get a better view. To his surprise, an image of Tethys materialized before him, the glow of the holo spreading faintly across the otherwise darkened room. "Why you in bed?" Twi'lek asked, arching her eyebrows in surprise. "You sleeping, or you with a friend?" I'm alone," Theron stammered, his mind spinning as he tried to wrap his head around the situation. "Why is she calling? Where is she calling from? How did she know where I'm staying?" "Didn't think you'd be home," Tethys said. "Gonna leave a message." Theron realized he wasn't the only one taken aback by their unexpected conversation. Knowing Tethys was a bit flustered as well helped him regain some of his composure. "So give me the message." After a moment's hesitation, Tethys took a deep breath then blurted out, "Know you were there on Narshada. Don't need you following us. Don't want you following us. Back off, or you be sorry." "How'd you even get this number?" Theron asked, not bothering to respond to her ultimatum. "Not so hard," Tethys replied. "You think you only one who can find people? So you went to all the trouble of tracking me down just to tell me to leave you alone?" "Didn't ask for your help," Tethys snapped, ignoring his observation. "Don't need it. Take care of ourself." "Really? Seemed to me if I hadn't stepped in, you'd be a rotting corpse in a Narshada landfill right about now." "Think we owe you now?" Tethys sneered. "That why you help us?" "I just happened to be in the area. Thought I'd help you out for old time's sake." "Liar. Not just Narshada, right? You there on Korriban? Belsavis? Zeost?" "I've never been to Zeost in my life," Theron answered truthfully. "No more watching," Tethys continued. "Stop following us. Got it?" "Don't worry about it," Theron answered. "I'm staying on Coruscant for a while, taking some time off from field work. I'm focusing on reports and paperwork now." "Why would you even tell her that? You becoming one of those office drones that complains to anyone who'll listen?" "You behind a desk?" Tethys' face broke into a grin. "Funny." The choice wasn't really mine," Theron said, his voice betraying more anger than he intended. "Always got a choice," Tethys sniffed. "Sounds like you just a quitter." "Why do you even care?" Theron demanded. "Don't," Tethys said with a shrug. "Be boring. We don't care. Just leave us alone." The holo abruptly disconnected, leaving Theron alone in the dark. He rolled over, closed his eyes, and tried to go to sleep. But something Tethys had said had lodged itself inside his head, and instead of drifting off into dreamland, he kept circling back to it. She mentioned Zeost. The old Tion Brotherhood must have begun moving in there when the Empire started allowing outsiders to visit the world. The simple fact might seem insignificant, but Theron knew there was a reason he couldn't let it go. His subconscious had latched onto it for some reason. Now he had to draw it out. Zeost. That's the key, Zeost. In a flash of inspiration, it all came together. Operation Endgame. Ignited by the catalyst, the past week of research and analysis fused into the beginnings of a plan to bring down the Ascendant Spear. Theron sprang out of bed, eager to record the details while they were still fresh in his mind. "And with a little luck, this will get me back in the field, too." Okay, it switches gears now here. Darth Marr was the last of the assembled Dark Council members to arrive at their secret chamber beneath the Citadel. He'd scheduled the meeting, contacting the others only hours after learning of Darth Gravis's death. But even though he'd summoned them, he still had no idea what he was going to say. He'd reviewed the official records of the battle over Lerator, including transcriptions of the communications between Gravis and Carad in the field reports filed by Moff Lorman. The Ascendant Spear dropped out of hyperspace beyond range of the Republic scanners, at which time Darth Carad informed Darth Gravis of our arrival. "Darth Gravis, this is Darth Carad. The Ascendant Spear is at your disposal." Disengage, Carad. We didn't call for reinforcements. This is my battle to win, not yours. Darth Carad disregarded Darth Grievous' request, choosing to aid the Imperial war effort by engaging the enemy fleet. After the Ascendant Spear disposed of one of the Republic hammerheads, Darth Grievous and Darth Carad had the following exchange. You think this will turn the Dark Council against me, Carad? You could take out every Republic ship in the quadrant, but when it comes time to choose someone to join their ranks, they'll still pick me over a Faline. You do not grasp the danger you are in, Grievous. You could be killed in this battle. I am here to ensure a desirable outcome for the Empire. Ignore the Republic ships. Fire on the Ascendant Spear. Destroy it at all costs. Do not let it... At this time, Grievous switched to an auxiliary communications channel. Shortly after this, he fired on the Ascendant Spear as we continued to engage the Republic fleet. Darth Carad was forced to destroy Grievous and his fleet to defend her ship and crew. The official military review would clearly show Grievous had been in the wrong. However, it was obvious to Mar, just as it would be obvious to everyone on the Dark Council, that Carad had intentionally goaded him into firing the first shot. The fact that Carad had brazenly defied Mar's instructions and undermined his attempts to unify the Sith by eliminating a rival was disturbing. He was starting to wonder if granting her a seat on the Dark Council would be more trouble than it was worth. His immediate concern, however, was dealing with the fallout from the other Sith Lords assembled in the room. Darth Mar, Vowron said, by way of greeting. It's impolite to keep us all waiting. Mar ignored the Sith's sardonic words. You all know what happened to Grievous, he said, getting straight to the matter at hand. You all know why we're here. It seems Grievous is no longer a viable candidate, Vowron said with a coy smile. Does this mean Carad is our choice by default? That question must be answered by the entire Dark Council, Mar replied, bracing himself for the outrage and protests of the others. There was an unexpected silence before the ancient Darth Rictus spoke up. Carad answered the question for us, he proclaimed. She bested her rival with strength, yet was cunning enough to make it appear she was in the right. These are the traits of a true Sith. Darth Mar was left momentarily speechless at the unexpected show of support. Given Rictus's many years on the Dark Council, his approval would go a long way toward winning the others over. We were willing to give the seat to Grievous if he defeated the Republic at Larator, Mortis chimed in. Since Carad claimed the victory, she deserves the prize. Mar was even more surprised by Mortis's support. His sphere of influence was laws and justice, and even though the Empire's version of justice could often be summarized as might makes right, he had assumed Mortis would be outraged by what Carad had done. Grievous was our candidate, he said, looking for clarification. You don't want to seek revenge for his death? I thought Grievous was more powerful than Carad, he replied, but his death proves otherwise. She issued a challenge and he accepted by firing on her ship, a fatal mistake. It seems I underestimated the Faline. She took bold action, Darth Ravage added. She saw what she wanted and she seized it. If more of the other Sith Lords beneath us followed her example, the Republic would not have us running like cowards. Their words momentarily caught Mar by surprise. Though Carad's actions were perfectly in line with the traditional ways of the Sith, he'd thought it would take longer for the rest of the Dark Council to overcome their inherent prejudice and welcome a member of the lesser species into their ranks. Of a lesser species. However, he understood that their willingness to embrace Carad was still driven by the one trait they all shared, self-preservation. As Dark Lords of the Sith, they understood the power of Carad's ship and the opportunity she represented. The spear was vital if they hoped to turn the tide of the galactic war, and down the road Carad could be a powerful ally to use against not only the Republic but also the other members of the Dark Council. For now, they would invite her in with open arms, each publicly voicing support to try to win her over as they bided their time. Waiting patiently, they would play their political games, trying to twist her allegiance so they could use her and her ship to their own advantage, even as they slowly plotted her destruction. In other words, they would see her as they each saw every other member of the Dark Council, simultaneously a potential ally and a potential enemy. Mar sighed inwardly. Kara had not hesitated to wipe out a fellow Dark Lord to advance her own career. Even though the loss of Gravis made the Empire more vulnerable to the Republic, he had hoped the Falleen might be more open to his efforts to unify the Sith against a common foe, but she had proven herself to be as much a student of the old ways as all the others. Despite his best efforts, the culture of backstabbing and infighting still prevailed. The Emperor had kept it under control by virtue of his own unassailable position and power, but in his absence, it was eating away at the core of the Empire, and Mar was starting to doubt if he or any among the great Sith Lords would be able to stop it. And that is the end of that chapter. So that is all I'm going to read for the night. I'm keeping it at 2 chapters per reading. So we'll pick up chapter 10 and 11 next time. And let's see, who have we got on that could use a little attention? Well, Vesper's on. I raid him a lot. I'm going to maybe go somewhere else. Some of the people that I follow, I would raid them, but they don't so much as acknowledge that they've gotten a raid, let alone say hello or anything. So there's not many people I raid. So I think I'm going to go for Hot Dog Raw Dog. He's playing Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. So that looks interesting to me. I'm going to take us on over there. Bear with me a couple of minutes, and I will see you there.
Feeling shattered skies, watching teary blue eyes, wonder where I might find some peace of mind. Not like I had, but more sophisticated.